I'm gonna do a quick vid. Oh, it's a bit bright. Hang on. There. No, still crap. Better? Okay. I'm gonna do a quick vid regarding the potential future of steroid regulation. Now, sounds like a strange topic, but it came up on a forum Facebook page that I'm on. The question, someone had mentioned that basically they were seeing more and more people abusing gear, not training correctly, throwing a shitload of drugs in, then not taking them when they weren't training up and down like yos with size. And they said that with this pattern of use, they would expect there to be more regulation. This has been, people have mentioned this for a long time. Now, as it currently stands, most advisory bodies in drug care, drug rehabilitation, harm reduction advise against criminalisation of users. The reason is that they feel that if users are criminalised, that it would then push usage underground, which as a result would cause more health related issues because people wouldn't seek advice, they wouldn't seek support, and therefore they would suffer in silence, so to speak. They also feel that it would criminalise people that otherwise were not doing anything wrong within their lifestyles. So the current standing is obviously that the supply is criminalised now, and the importation. So basically, effectively, what this does is it's intended to stop the supply chain. There, if you can't get hold of it, it should minimise users. Obviously, as we all know, this isn't really working. I mean, just in Yorkshire alone, or West Yorkshire, since, well, basically at all, in the history of West Yorkshire, there has only been 18 supply cases brought to court. So it gives an indication of how low priority steroid supply actually is for the police force. Now, recently they changed the law on legal highs on new and emerging psychoactive substances. And basically the law went very similar to the steroid law in that supply would be deemed illegal, but possession was not. The police fought against this quite strongly. They didn't want this law change at all because they felt it was enforceable and that it would have low impact, and that it was going to be particularly difficult to police when manpower was already low and budgets were already stretched. They have a very, very similar approach to steroid use. It's very low priority for them. They don't feel there is much financial reward. Now, what I mean by that is that prosecution and enforcement costs money. Now, part of this is business related. In order to justify that expenditure, there has to be some sort of social impact in one way or another, and that be a lower crime rate, therefore low cost of policing, or a high return from seizures or proceeds of crimes type orders. Prison service is already stretched to its limit. I think it's about 86,000 population now. And there's already space issues within that. The criminal justice system is already struggling to deal with the workload it already has. So they don't want to import any more pressure on this, either financially or volume-wise. I think the other thing is that the regulation and law change usually comes from social impact. Now, when we look at steroid use in general, social impact isn't that massive. We don't get people beating up grannies or stealing TVs or robbing houses or cars to fund their steroid habit. So there isn't that level of criminality involved with usage. The other thing is, not always, but a large percentage of steroid manufacturers, UGLs and such like, that's all they do. They're not involved in other organised crime or Class A's or anything else. So therefore, again, there's a low criminality aspect. So the only other real way would be social impact from families, disruption of families, etc., which is debatable. The whole steroid anger issue relation, most studies show that there isn't a particular link, and it's more a case of it's an angry person that takes steroids rather than it's steroids that create an angry person. And then the other impact is obviously healthcare. Now that's where we may see some changes. Healthcare is starting to see more and more incidents regarding steroid use, but in a lot of cases users will not admit usage, and a lot of symptoms from steroid use can be caused from other aspects. So it's not always that easy to define. Now what may happen, and something that I think would potentially be a route that they may try and go, is private and public sector, private sector enforcement. Effectively what I'm talking about here is, it's already happened in public sector. The MOD, they test for steroids, have done for the last 2.5 years, and it's disciplinary. The police test for steroids, and the police are now looking at expanding that to other performance and image enhancing drugs. So the police are now looking at reviewing their policies to cover stuff like prohormones, SARMs, peptides, that whole manner of things. So the general proposal at the moment is that it would be, instead of it being specifically steroids as it has been up to now, with a proposal that was to just include prohormones, that they will now just group it as performance and image enhancing drugs are banned, you cannot take them. Prison officers of a similar situation. So straight away we start to see enforcement in usage via the public sector. Now it could be that government officials decide then that all public sector employees, so council workers, etc., will all start being mandatorily tested for steroids, or tested with cause. So with cause testing means that they are under suspicion of usage. And there's a general proposed list of things like rapid weight gain, rapid weight loss, water retention, acne, changes in personality, etc., etc. It's a bit grey and probably a bit of a civil rights minefield, but we'll see where they go with that. So if that's the case, then a very easy route for the government to take, or a very efficient route for the government to take, would be then to start looking at pushing policy onto private sector, where they would encourage companies to test for steroid use within employees. We already see it creeping in the rail networks. We already see it creeping in some aviation companies. One recently I know had a discovery of steroids on use on premises, so they have now instigated a testing policy for all 1,500 of their employees. Now, in order to facilitate this, the government could quite easily start looking at financial incentives, either offering through a governmental service testing at a reduced rate, or offering grants in order to facilitate a testing service. But I think personally that is probably more likely than legal enforcement. I know the police are opposed to legal enforcement. I know most of the advisory committees and bodies are opposed to legal enforcement. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility. I mean, we've seen it before, but I still think it's unlikely. The other thing is that countries like Canada and America, where usage is illegal, are actually starting to step back a little bit from enforcement of these policies. Generally now, enforcement of uses in Canada, though it does happen, it is generally only reserved to supply. And there's a massive movement in America, and there's a couple of papers being drafted to put in front of Congress to propose that their steroid law reverts back to its previous state, which was where you could legally purchase these through the private medical service, and they were administered and controlled by your doctor. So therefore you could get a prescription, you could go buy your gear from the chemist, and you could use it under doctor prescription, whether you had a medical need for it or not. And that's the proposals that are being pushed forward in the States, so that to decriminalise it because it's ineffective and it's difficult to enforce, and to use it through medical supervision, which their idea is that hopefully that will reduce the harms associated with steroid use and control it more effectively. Even places like Sweden, where it is very, very strictly enforced that regards steroid use, and there have been several cases where individuals have been pulled off the street, arrested, and then tested for use based purely on their appearance. When this has gone to court and it's been challenged at the High Court, it's been ruled that the police cannot arrest on suspicion of use based on size, and it's in breach of Europa law. Police still do it. It hasn't really filtered back into interaction, but they are losing cases at the High Court based on this. So even one of the strictest countries in the world, they are starting to lose ground on fighting against personal usage. So my personal opinion is that we will see some form of enforcement or some form of penalty for usage, but it won't come in a criminal form. It will come in other avenues and other forms of control. This is only my opinion, and obviously could be very, very wrong. It's just when I look at it from the outside looking in, this is where I see it going. Speaking to police officers that enforce, they have no real interest in it, and they really don't know about it, and they really don't want to know about it. They have no money to instigate training. And what training is available for the police forces from a point of view of personal use, to be honest, is dire. It's terrible. So I do see there being some changes there. And I know that a couple of forces at the moment are reviewing policy. But that's where I see it going. Enforcement via employment rather than via criminality. Obviously, it could be wrong, and other people are entitled to their opinion on this, but I do think it's a very interesting subject, and I'll be very interested to know what you guys think. Alright, thank you for your time, and I'm going to have a coffee now, and I'll catch up with you later.